G'day Earthlings, Dr. Rank here, and welcome to Gaming Legends, the show that refuses to believe this game is 15 years old. It's been 3 years since we did a challenge run of Super Mario Galaxy. Unfortunately, Nintendo's stinginess prevented me from making a sequel to that video. Until now. Can you beat Super Mario Galaxy 2 with a GameCube controller? The rules are the same as last time. We're playing the game on official hardware with official hardware. All input devices are banned except for Nintendo GameCube controllers made by Nintendo. This is only possible with the brand new Nintendo Switch port of Galaxy 2, which has an identical control scheme to the 3D All-Stars version of Galaxy 1. When plugged in through a USB adapter, the GameCube controller is treated as a Pro controller, albeit with a few missing buttons and no ability to remap them. This will be a low score challenge in 2 categories, based on how often those missing buttons are required. Gyros refer to the number of power stars collected with the use of motion controls, which also includes the touchscreen this time, and crouches refer to the number of times we have to press the ZL button. A lower gyro count is always better than a lower crouch count. Without further ado, let's get this run started. Unlike Galaxy 1, menu navigation is actually possible this time. We can highlight menu options using either the control stick or C-stick. Once in the game proper, we can operate the spin attack with the X and Y buttons, no shaking required. This makes both missions in Sky Station Galaxy an absolute breeze, but make sure you grab the Comet Medal in the first one. There's a Comet Medal in the first level of each galaxy, and they're a surprise tool that'll help us later. I should also mention that Galaxy 2 is structured very differently. There's an actual world map, and progression requires at least 1 star from each galaxy along the path, plus enough total stars to destroy the barriers. The run really gets interesting in the Yoshi Star Galaxy. Yoshi's tongue is operated entirely with the cursor, which can only be controlled with either motion controls or the touchscreen. The good news is we can still make the cursor appear in the center of the screen by holding the R or Z buttons. The bad news is, unlike the other cursor functions, Yoshi's tongue does not work in first-person mode, so we're entirely at the mercy of the camera. Thankfully, every object we're required to lick in this level falls within the center of the screen at some point. The second Yoshi Star mission requires us to spit out Spinies at various points. Yoshi automatically aims them towards the cursor, but that means we can't get a good enough angle for this cage. But then I realized I was an idiot. If you stop pressing R with the GameCube controller, the cursor disappears, allowing Yoshi to simply shoot in the direction he's facing. This fact makes the rest of the mission, including the King Lakitu boss fight, entirely possible. The rest of World 1 wasn't much of a hassle at all. We can easily get 2 stars each from the Spin Dig, Fluffy Bluff, and Right Side Down galaxies, as well as 1 star each from Flip Swap and Bowser Jr.'s Fiery Flotilla. Unfortunately, World 2 opens with Puzzle Plank Galaxy, which is the designated ground pound tutorial. Ground pounds are performed by pressing the crouch button in mid-air, and the crouch button is mapped to ZL. And guess what the one shoulder button we don't have is? I tried desperately to make progress without ground pounds, but I couldn't even get off the first planet. It is technically possible for the game to collect a star for us via the Cosmic Spirit, but she only appears on specific missions at specific checkpoints and only after dying a certain number of times. She doesn't appear at all in Puzzle Plank, and there's nothing to kill us on the first planet anyway. The best we can do with the GameCube controller alone is 12 stars and 7 Comet Medals. But Dr. Rank, what about the wireless Nintendo GameCube controller for Nintendo Switch 2, available to Nintendo Switch Online members? This thing functions identically to a normal GameCube controller in all games that support it, and it has a ZL function built into it. Why not just use that one instead? Oh, don't worry, I ordered one of those controllers specifically with this run in mind, only to discover it's a little too good. For reasons known only to a colorblind programmer at Nintendo's hardware division, the Nintendo GameCube controller for Nintendo Switch 2 has a motion sensor. Playing with this controller gives you full motion control functionality, which defeats the entire purpose of this challenge in the first place. Only the original Nintendo GameCube controller, made for the Nintendo GameCube, is allowed for this run. And since it can't ground pound, the run is officially failed. Now that we're officially doing a minimalist run, I can swap to a different controller for ground pounds. I personally recommend the Nintendo 64 controller for Nintendo Switch, whose Z button acts as ZL, and which also doesn't have a motion sensor. We need to use 2 ground pounds to get onto this planet, but from here we have a chance to shave some off. You normally need to ground pound the pillars on the underside to reach the launch star, but that is entirely optional. We can't backflip without the ZL button, but we can still side flip and spin to grab the launch star. Unfortunately, finishing the level from here requires a whopping 12 more ground pounds for a total of 14. That seems like a lot, so how about we don't? There's a hidden star in this level, and it just so happens to branch off from this planet. It costs 70 coins to access though, and I was only able to scrounge up about 60. Getting the last 10 requires 2 more ground pounds on specific switches to spawn more coins. The Hungry Luma's launch star leads to a boss fight with Bugaboom, who requires 3 more ground pounds to defeat. Overall, going for the hidden star requires 7 ground pounds, half what it costs to get the main star. The only downside is that we're forced to skip the Comet Medal in the process. Boulder Bowl Galaxy is much easier, being based around the Rock Mushroom. The only downside is that we can't use a ground pound input to stop rolling, but as long as you aim properly, that shouldn't be an issue. Defeating Rolladillo also unlocks the Chimp Stomp challenge back in Fluffy Bluff, which we get through with ease. Hightail Falls is another Yoshi level, this time centered around the Dash Pepper power-up. There's some tricky flower platforming at the end, but nothing we haven't seen already in Yoshi Star. The hidden star, however, is much harder. We need to take down all the Kleptoads carrying the silver stars, but they're too fast to catch up to them on foot. We can, of course, eat them with proper cursor alignment, but I just wasn't able to kill them consistently. But if we can't go faster, we can make them slower. Introducing our secret weapon, Co-Star Mode. If we grab a second GameCube controller, we can bring in the Co-Star Luma, who can freeze and then spin any enemy that falls within the cursor's range. This gives us all the time in the world to take out the Kleptoads. From here, the map is a split path between Wild Glide and Cosmic Cove. The former requires motion controls to even get past the tutorial, so that ain't happening. Cosmic Cove revolves around swimming for the first half, and we can't dive from the surface without the ZL button. Instead, we can either enter the water with a Koopa shell, or jump and spin from the surface to get a deep enough entry to start swimming. Unfortunately, the first star in Cosmic Cove requires a ground pound switch to freeze the lake and wall jump up the waterfall. Obviously, we don't want to do that. The good news is, there's a hidden star in this level accessible with a 15 coin toll. The bad news is, it's also impossible. We have to catch a star bunny on a planet covered entirely in shallow water, and we are simply too slow. You're supposed to ground pound another switch to freeze the planet, but that's obviously not an option either. Co-Star Luma can't help us either. The bunny is immune to her freezing powers. So is that it then? Has the map reached another stalemate? Not quite. There's actually a third branch on this path. If we feed this Hungry Luma 700 star bits, we can unlock the Honey Bloom Galaxy, which is an absolute pushover. This allows us to move on past the fork in the road and reach Bowser's Lava Lair. There's a pull star right after the first planet, but we can grab it with the cursor in first person mode, then release A at the right time to float all the way down with its momentum. Unfortunately, there are several required ground pounds in this level. We can get enough height from the trampoline just by pressing A with proper timing, and we can skip the first switch by just yeeting ourselves off a cliff, but we have to knock these meteors into the locks to open the doors. 1 ground pound for the first door, and 3 more for the second. We also need to use the meteors to fight Bowser himself, adding 4 more ground pounds. Overall, this Grand Star adds 8 to our crouch score. World 3 is structured a bit differently. The path to the boss is a straight line, with the only requirement being the collection of 28 stars. That said, we do still want as many as possible, so we will absolutely be playing the World 3 levels themselves. My path through this world started with Tall Trunk 1 and Haunty Halls 1, both featuring Yoshi power-ups, as well as Freezy Flake 1, none of which posed any issues. Rolling Masterpiece requires motion controls, so that's out, but that's okay. We can do Cloudy Court's Hidden Star instead. At this point, I was able to do certain levels with the best character, Llewellyn, who runs slightly faster and jumps slightly higher. If you've been keeping track though, that was our 4th star from World 3, meaning we now have access to Prankster Comet missions. From now on, the game will unlock 1 Prankster Comet for every star we obtain, up to a maximum of 3 active comets per world at a time. In order for a comet to appear in any given galaxy, we need both the Comet Medal and all non-hidden stars from that galaxy, along with a specific number of total Comet Medals. All the available comets in Worlds 1 and 3, as well as Hightail Falls, were no more difficult than usual. Boulder Bowl's comet took me a few tries since Rock Mario is hard to aim, but it's not too bad. The comet in Bowser's Lava Lair is a repeat of the normal star, which means more required ground pounds, making it impossible. The most devastating loss, though, is Puzzle Plank's comet. Since we didn't get the normal star or the Comet Medal from this galaxy, its comet will never appear for us, so we can't even attempt it. Which is a problem because every single purple coin comet in the game is locked behind the completion of this one. That means we can never play the comets for Flip Swap or Tall Trunk even if we meet their requirements. Of the World 3 stars we can play, none posed any major threats up until Bowser Jr.'s Fearsome Fleet. This is another Yoshi level centered around eating bullet bills and shooting them. Just like with Spinies, we can aim them with Yoshi's body if the cursor is absent. The boss fight with Mega Hammer is a little finicky. To hit the weak spots on his chest, we need to aim at roughly 20-degree angle, which is difficult to get with the GameCube's control stick. But once you land 2 hits on each pectoral, the back and the head are sitting ducks, letting us easily get both the Grand Star and eventually the Daredevil Comet. World 4 opens with the Supermassive Galaxy, which requires you to do several long jumps that we can't do. But, as always, requires is in air quotes. We can make every single jump using only the normal jump and a mid-air spin. This is made much easier with Lucario with his increased jump height, making both the normal and hidden stars a breeze. He is sadly not available in the Comet, but Mario can still just barely make it. We theoretically could have bypassed Supermassive by taking the Hungry Luma to Sweet Mystery. Despite being another Yoshi level with bulb berries, it wasn't any hassle, though the Comet here is a purple coin one, so we can't play it. However, the path from Sweet Mystery goes directly to Flipsville, whose whole gimmick is ground pounding through gates to flip gravity. I tried to go as far as I could with only wall jumps, and I did manage to make it up to the first launch star. But try as I might, I couldn't get past the chain chomps in this area. And even if I could, Glamdozer is a ground pound exclusive boss. Thankfully, since we did do Supermassive, we can take the alternate path through the much easier Honey Hop. This puts us on a split path between Chompworks and Starshine Beach galaxies. Chompworks seemed promising at first, but right at the end we need to guide the Golden Chomp to its destination to bank the star. To get it into the last section, we need to use a ground pound switch to raise a platform. Starshine Beach, meanwhile, is thankfully much easier. You need to use the finicky spin jump method to get underwater and reach the first launch star, but once you get past that, the level is a cakewalk. Though I did manage to somehow miss the Comet Medal on my first pass because I forgot that it was underwater. You're not legally allowed to go underwater while riding Yoshi, and you need to do a backflip in order to dismount him, which requires holding ZL and pressing the jump button. What I did was intentionally take damage from a nearby enemy, which forces you off Yoshi. From there, I was able to easily reach the Comet Medal. Unfortunately, Yoshi and his blimp fruit are absent in the second star, requiring the use of Cloud Mario. The only Cloud Flower in the level will only appear after using a ground pound switch, so we can't collect it. Of course, there are known methods to get up there without the Cloud Flower, which should absolutely be viable for my run, but I didn't learn about this until after I'd already finished. Even if I did get this star though, we still couldn't play the Comet anyway because it has more purple coins. We now have safe passage to Bowser's Gravity Gauntlet, which, just like his lava lair, has some required ground pounds. 3 to enter Bowser's Arena, and 4 to fight the man himself. Our crouch score goes up by 7. And as for the Comet, I will get back to you! World 5 is the most branch-ridden world so far, with almost every galaxy being technically optional. Keyword, almost. Space Storm Galaxy is the opener here, and it's the designated pull star level of this game. The good news is we can activate pull stars in first person, and release A at the right time to carry the momentum forwards to reach the launch star. The bad news is, that's not enough for the final section. Not only is this pull star section long, it also curves around the cylinder. We can use gravity to our advantage and manipulate the cursor's position slightly, but eventually the direction of gravity shifts, preventing us from getting a clear shot to the star. I spent over an hour trying this section. My star bit count maxed out, and I got absolutely nowhere. But Dr. Rank, isn't there a hidden star on this planet? Yes, but until we get the first star in Boo Moon Galaxy, which is later in World 5, that star legally doesn't exist. With all other options exhausted, I used motion controls to navigate the pull stars, giving us our first gyro score of the run. Space Storm 2 was a lot more interesting though. This mission is based on using ground pound switches to slow down time, but turns out that mechanic is completely optional. Instead of trying to sneak under the thwomps, do a side flip to land on top of them and skip straight to the pipe. The moving platforms can be difficult to navigate, but with some quick thinking and a healthy dose of wall jumps, you can easily reach the arena at the top. Now that we're in World 5 proper, we can focus on gathering 55 stars. The first one I tried was Fleet Glide Galaxy, which went about as well as expected. Unlocking this galaxy cost me 1500 star bits, but don't worry, I was able to get a refund. In Shiverburn, you're supposed to ground pound a switch to freeze the lava, but we obviously can't do that. Thankfully, there's a cloud flower near the beginning of the level, which we can use to make a bridge across the pit. From there, we can damage boost off the lava and land on this platform, where we can do a mid-air spin to reach the launch star. We do have to repeat this process to reach the pipe leading to the hidden star, but it's simple to do with proper aim. And of course, the Comet was made trivial with Rainbow Mario, though we are sadly incapable of skating backwards in this run. Slipsand Galaxy was an absolute pushover with both stars and the Comet. The main star in Boo Moon requires a ground pound switch right at the end to reach the silver stars. Since we can't reach them without it, we're locked out of both Star 2 and the hidden star from Space Storm. Thankfully, there's a hidden star in Boo Moon accessible by following the snake block all the way. Upside Dizzy was a tricky one. I initially thought the main star would be impossible because of a required ground pound switch to flip the gravity, so I backtracked and got the hidden star instead. Upon revisiting the level though, I realized I could just bounce off the Paragoombas to reach it instead. With at least 55 stars obtained, we can tackle Bowser Jr.'s Boom Bunker, which is impossible. The very first planet requires the use of a cannon, which is aimed with the cursor. We can only fire at the center of the screen, which completely misses the target. We're forced to use motion controls to aim the cannon. At least it's only the one time, as the second cannon is already aimed perfectly, getting a 1-up every single time. But we still need a ground pound to destroy these stones and reveal the launch star, plus 3 more ground pounds to fight Junior himself. Overall, this level increases our scores by 1 gyro and 4 crouches. World 6 opens with Melty Monster Galaxy. The first star is very similar to Melty Molten from Galaxy 1, being a pull-star obstacle course between several suns. But unlike Melty Molten, these suns don't have their own gravity, allowing us to easily manipulate ourselves with pull-star momentum. Once you reach the first launch star, the rest of the level is a cakewalk. We could have alternatively done the bowling minigame for the hidden star, but at this point in the game we need every star and comet medal we can get. The second star from Melty Monster took me a few tries, but that's just how it normally is. The main path through World 6 then goes to Clockwork Ruins, which is where things get hairy. The path to the main star and the comet medal requires multiple ground pound switches to progress, so we can't get any further than this planet. Thankfully, there's a hidden star branching off from the starting planet requiring only 30 coins. This one has more ground pound switches to slow down the hammers, but just like in Space Storm 2, they are completely optional. Unfortunately, that means we have to leave Clockwork Ruins with only a single star and no comet medal. Not that we could unlock the comet anyway. And to make matters worse, the next galaxy on the path is Throwback Galaxy. This level is a remake of Womp's Fortress from Mario 64, complete with a boss fight against the Womp King, whose only weakness is ground pounds. Oh, and this guy isn't even the Womp King himself. He's just the bodyguard you have to kill to get to him. Since Throwback Galaxy doesn't have any hidden stars to collect, that means the path is blocked here, preventing us from even attempting Battle Belt Galaxy. Thankfully, there's a detour we can take for 1800 star bits that goes through Flashback and Slimy Spring instead. Flash Black has a Blimp Fruit section, but it's pretty easy. Just make sure you take the right path for the Comet medal. The Comet itself is no more difficult than usual, nor is the Soul Star from Slimy Spring. Unfortunately, the second Slimy Spring star is locked behind the Comet from Bowser's Galaxy Generator, making it an exclusively post-game objective. Speaking of the Galaxy Generator, we need 70 stars to unlock it, but after doing every single star I've mentioned until now, we only have 67. Ideally, we could try one of the comets we haven't played yet, but we only have 31 comet medals. Every remaining comet either requires more than 31, or is locked behind other stars we've already deemed impossible. If we want this run to finish, we need to break the rules on at least one star. Of the remaining stars, the one that seemed the most promising was Cosmic Cove 1. Completing this mission only requires a single ground pound switch, raising the crouch counter by 1, but would also allow us to get 1 extra comet medal and unlock Cosmic Cove 2. That was my initial plan at least. But while editing the video, I realized I was an idiot. Remember how we couldn't do the first star in Chompworks Galaxy? Turns out this is one of the few checkpoints where the Cosmic Spirit can show up. If we repeatedly kill ourselves, we can eventually talk to her, and she'll puppeteer Mario into ground pounding the switch for us, no ZL button required. This does degrade the Power Star into a Bronze Star, but it still unlocks everything the normal star would. This unlocks both Chompworks 2 and Boulder Bowl's Hidden Star, both of which are cakewalks, though the Chompworks Comet is still impossible since the Cosmic Spirit is too shy to hang out with cosmic clones. That brings us to exactly 70 stars, but since one of them is bronze, it still feels a little cheap. Thankfully, Chompworks gave us our 32nd Comet medal, unlocking the Comet for Bowser's Gravity Gauntlet. While the main star here required 7 ground pounds to defeat Bowser, this speedrun version ends before the first of those ground pounds occurs. With 71 stars under our belts, we can finally access the final level, Bowser's Galaxy Generator. The first half of the level goes by very smoothly, but then we switch to Yoshi. The window to lick the flowers is much tighter due to the presence of lava, leading to me just bouncing off it with my butt on fire. Other than that, there wasn't much this section could throw at me, though I did go for the Comet medal just because I could. But, as usual, there's still required ground pounds here. 3 to open the door leading to Bowser, 4 to fight Bowser himself, and 4 more for the meteors in the final phase. Total for the level, 11 crouches. With Princess Peach rescued and Mario rendered permanently hatless, the Galaxy 2 GameCube run ends with a final score of 2 gyros and 37 crouches. If you want to watch the run yourself, you can view it without commentary on my archive channel. Also, I'm sorry there's been a bit of a content drought lately. I've just been really getting into speedrunning, and I've been busy with other life events. But don't worry, I'm not done with challenge runs yet. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That's all for now, and I will see you down under.